Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to Worth It Then, Worth It Now, an ongoing side project I do here on this channel where I kind of celebrate games of yesteryear. They're not contemporary or in season, but they are games near and dear to my heart that I think deserve a follow-up. And on top of that, I try and couple it all together with a sale, and there's no exception today as we look at Far Cry 3. And my goodness, again, I just jump back into these briefly for B-roll, but it trips all the nerve endings, the nostalgia, everything. This is one of the greatest games I've ever played, without a doubt. And it is fascinating looking at these older games through this modern lens. I'm not quite as jaded as a lot of people when it comes to modern gaming. I still recognize that, from a certain perspective, each current year is kind of the best year for gaming. We are absolutely inundated with an oversupply, arguably. And yes, that brings with it shovelware and derivative gameplay, but still we, are on the tip of the spear when it comes to new games. But when you go back to things that are timelessly excellent, and that's how I see Far Cry 3, it really does open your eyes to how derivative, copy-paste and follow the dot points on a blueprint a lot of modern gaming is. Anyway, look, for all that to say, this game is on deep sale at the moment. You can get it for like $5 Australian on Steam. If you haven't played it since the old days when it came out in 2012, it's worth going back. If you slept on it, I'm telling you now, it still holds up. I didn't have any performance issues getting it running or anything like that. All good, all fine on Steam. But yeah, it is just that good. And look, I am an Ubisoft apologist. As you can see, even on this channel, right? I enjoy a lot of even their modern fare. I recognize their faults, but I'm not really interested in just tearing Ubisoft to pieces for the sake of clicks and gossip. There are issues, but they worked out their model a long time ago, and arguably this is an inflection point, Far Cry 3. This is where the foundations really, found root and took hold. Far Cry 2, I don't think you can really talk about this game without talking about Far Cry 2 as well. Those two are tied together. Far Cry 1 is something else altogether, and it has its own rich history to be discussed around the Cry engine and Crysis, separating out the rights between Ubisoft and how Far Cry became its own thing. And while that was kind of an interesting birth of open world experiment in the real early stages of this space, Far Cry 2 and Far Cry 3 really cemented Ubisoft's place in this space and their model, which is memed upon, climbing towers, etc. The reason I mentioned Far Cry 2, that's still something special, but it doesn't quite have the heart that Far Cry 3 has. I still love Far Cry 2. If you're not across it, it's almost like Blood Diamond, the video game. You're a mercenary gun for hire trying to make a buck, collecting diamonds and fighting off malaria in the kind of open world of Africa. It's gritty, it's dark and brooding, but as far as like the moving parts, driving, gunplay, world exploration, that was the prototype. That was that really got the model going. But Far Cry 3 is when it became something more, something with personality, something that was just so lightning in a bottle at the time, like it must have been while being the devs, while they were in the middle of it. They must have known they had magic. I can only imagine, while you were developing Halo, right? When you're in the driver's seat of making the cake, as it were, just throwing ingredients in and realizing before it hits the street, this is actually magic. We're doing something wild. And, I point to examples like Vaas, the big villain in Far Cry 3, who absolutely steals the show. They clearly just let him loose in a collaborative, go nuts on the microphone. There's something incredibly organic. They just let the dude cut loose. But here's the thing, in a pre-meta environment, he was a trailblazer. I really do wonder, it's not like I know these people personally or anything like that, but I think a lot of the direction of modern gaming, cinematic gaming, all that is very much owed to this one dude just going nuts in the voice booth. So much so that you have a look at things like Far Cry 4, honestly, one of my least played Far Cries. I really dislike the villain in that. I know a lot of people hold him up, but what that to me is a drama kid a la Troy Baker doing his darndest to grab the microphone and the spotlight and imitate and replicate Vaas. Let's turn Vaas up. Let's do him again. Let's franchise-ify the magic in the audio booth that we got there. And you can see that in 5, in 6, they've done the same thing. It's become a staple of Far Cry to have an eccentric villain that grabs the microphone and steals the show. But the real problem is this wasn't the plan in Far Cry 3. They clearly accidentally created this guy baking the cake. And every attempt since then has been a derivative attempt to copy this. So it's worth going back and checking it out, maybe even through the lens that I've presented. Maybe you haven't looked at it that way. Other aspects are the soundtrack as well. Oh my God. It's probably one of the best gaming soundtracks, and I think it marries with the exact analogy I was saying of them just cooking the cake, building the track as it goes, not following any blueprint. They tapped something magic with the mix of, island vocals and thrumming synthwave notes before synthwave was kind of made mainstream and cool. The gunplay still holds up really well, actually. That kind of surprised me. And there's collectibles and shit everywhere. Funnily enough, they all have little diamond symbols. I guess that telegraphs well, but that's almost a throwback to 2 with the diamond economy. There's no diamonds in this, it's just money. But you find, little boxes with diamonds, and they're not fiendishly hidden. Some of them probably are later on, but in my time going back to it, they're mostly just in rooms or behind a building or something like that. And there's something kind of simpler and more honest about it. Like, I'm happy just to collect these things. All you got to do is take 2 seconds out of your path to go around behind the building and pick it up, as opposed to what feels like has been focus grouped and gamified to the point where collectibles, have to have their own hidden puzzle and all that. And look, I think there's probably a balance to it. And I guess the point I'm really trying to impress from my time going back to this is just how pure it is. How it was just trying things before they were things, whether it's collectibles or an experimental soundtrack or, locked in first person narratives with eccentric characters, but not the type that you say, I know this is a tired example I use, but like the Critical Role guys on YouTube, the dudes that are more interested in having their acting moment to put in their portfolio, right? There is a meta layer to it that it's not really about organically being in the moment. It's more about being aware that you're an actor trying to make your imprint on the product. And to me, that just seems tacky. And you see so much of this meta layer to so much of everything these days. These characters, like the weird doctor that's dealing to the island locals, but also helping you behind closed doors, right? These characters and their performances seem earnest from the perspective of someone just giving it a go and trying to be the character. And, maybe to headcanon it a bit, they were like, oh, this is probably just a nothing video game that's not going to go anywhere or get noticed or whatever, but I'm just going to have fun with the character and do my best to do what the game director wants, right? Like, it feels like that's the perspective of a lot of what happened in this project, as opposed to, trying to use it as a stepping stone for your own career. So yes, not only does it hold up, but it also kind of puts in perspective the derivative works that followed on. And don't get me wrong, like I said, to go full circle, I'm a big Ubisoft fan, and a lot of the games that copied the Ubisoft model, all very good. There's a reason why it's such a reliable blueprint that we've built like $1 billion industry upon. But you can't beat the original recipe before it was a recipe. And Far Cry 2 into Far Cry 3 represents for me something fascinating to just dip back in and have a look at and see when developers were really fucking cooking in the AAA kitchen. Anyway, check it out. You'd be mad not to. Might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.